Hey Brickmaniacs, welcome back to another Mobile Designer Studio episode. I have Andreas Eggen joining me because we're talking about the Afrikakorps radio truck. So Andreas, this is the second kit now that you've designed for Brickmania. Once again, comes with two awesome minifigs, so we are going to have Landon in here in a little bit to chat a little bit more about that, along with some of the minifigs of the month that you picked up to go along with that theme. But concerning the kit itself, obviously kind of something that played a crucial role, but was not necessarily present in the Brickmania kit inventory. So what made you want to build this kit?
Yeah, so it started just like I saw this image online while I was just looking at World War II vehicles and such. I saw this image of this specific truck. It's kind of like a famous image whenever you search like World War II German car. I think this image just shows up and it's just like a tan car, and I didn't really know much about it. I tried to see if Brickmania had it and I hadn't seen anyone else do it, so I just thought, hey, I would like to give it a shot, just trying to make it myself. So I had a few versions of this where I actually used the old cab piece from like the old adventure set for the doors. Mm-hmm. So Dan saw that and he thought it was interesting, but he didn't really like that. And then he said, if you change out the doors, then we can talk. So I changed out the doors and I made it a bit larger and did some changes, and then Dan was down to make it as a kit. So Mary has been helping me with this one. So it's also credit to Mary for putting in a lot of work, just improving it, because I thought I was finished with it at first, but I sent it over. Mary gave me some feedback and did some reworks, and then we found something together that I'm really happy with.
How much of a learning process has that been for you? Because it's funny, now that we're doing these mobile designer studios, I hear a lot of people talk about how much they enjoy the build initially, but then they really get an education on what it takes to turn something from a personal build into a produced kit. What has been kind of an eye-opening experience for you in that regard?
Well, to me, I'm very familiar with Brickmania kits. I've been a Brickmania fan for a long time, so I know like all the types of details and techniques that would be typical for a Brickmania kit. But to me, really, it was just like what parts we can use and cannot use because of like parts availability and such. So that's like been a huge learning process and just seeing what works. And then I send over something I like, and then they say, hey, we can do this better. And then, for example, like the doors on the side, like the back doors, that was something like trying to get this angle just right. We had probably like 4 or 5 different versions of it, just trying to get it to work. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in the end.
One of the things you really notice about this vehicle is how iconic the front is. So I just have a question. When you see a vehicle like this and you go, oh man, I want to build that, where do you start in the sense that you know what features you want to capture? And so how do you bring it all together, at least for your initial prototype build?
Yeah, so to me, what was really just like standing out in this kit, or like whenever I build something, I usually just start looking at the shapes, especially like the round shapes, like over the wheel. Sorry, it's just I just look at this and I see, oh, what pieces can I use to bring this detail out? And to me, I just looked at this like slow pieces. That was some of like the first pieces I started using and trying to see, oh, how close to the wheel can I get with this specific piece, and then just building off of that and then just expanding. And one thing my first version didn't have was like the headlights, because I had no idea how to attach the headlights to the slopes. That was like very, very difficult to me, just trying to figure that out. But we made it, I guess. Yeah, so I usually just start with seeing like what details, especially like the back details. There weren't a lot of pictures of how it looked from the back. You could just mostly see it from the side. So just trying to do a bit of guesswork, but then finding some other photos and then just building on of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my other questions too, is, when you're working with something that has limited source material, and you know that it is important, obviously, to have the radio configured properly, how do you go about something like that? And then it kind of explain the construction of the radio in this truck?
Yeah, for the radio specifically, that was a bit of guesswork, but also just like doing a lot of research on what sorts of radios they use. I left a bit of that research to Lando and to the Brickmania team. I said this is the type of radio, and then we managed to find like 3 different radios that look similar, and then we picked the one that was just right. And so that ended up really well. I think it's hard for some of these vehicles because, well, I can talk about the history of it, but it was a very limited car because it was just made early and pre World War II, just very early war. I think it was just produced up until like 1943, I think. They produced this because there were like a lot of German vehicles just very over complicated designs. They had to figure out how do we make this easier so we can mass produce stuff, because it's a very well made car, but then they couldn't make like many thousands of them because it took way too much time and money. So that's why they changed this one out with the Kubelwagen eventually. But it's a very early war car. That's why it fits the Africa theme very well. You would see this actually all over the war I think in most theaters that the Germans were in. Like you'd see them on the Eastern Front and such, but they weren't produced after 1943. So you would typically see some of these end up in like D-Day and in the Eastern Front and such. But the Kubelwagen and the Schwimmwagen was way more produced than this specific car.
Sure. Well, I think the interesting part of it too, and the reason I like it so much for the North Africa campaign, is that obviously when you're working with a continent that big and the amount of tanks that you have, communication is essential. I mean, it's always essential, but in that situation more, it even plays a role. And I like that you have the half track sitting there, Rommel's half track, because that's a good example of it as well, because that bar around the top isn't just a bar, it's a radio antenna because of, obviously playing on the importance of communications once again. So it's cool that you have all of those kits kind of together. You can really bring together a North Africa collection. We just got to get you some Panzers.
Yeah, well, that's like probably what makes this the most interesting is the radio, I think, more than the car itself, because that's what really changes the old type of warfare with the modern type of warfare is the communications. Because like back in World War I and such, you would have like an officer that would have to drive or run to the battlefield to give a message, and then they have to run back to get in safety. But now you can have this car and he can talk to the Panzer crew, and then they can message back, and then they can arrange like an attack with the with planes and with artillery and everything. So just it's just super important for any type of army to have like to have their radio communications. It's super important, and that's why I really wanted to do this, because you can have like as many tanks as you want and planes and everything, but sometimes you need to have some some communications to have everyone working in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the kit, what role did you play in the request or the want for the awesome 3D printed backpacks that the Minifigs are sporting?
Yeah, I noticed that Brickmania is doing like a lot of really good 3D printed work, and it just gets better and better every time, I think. So I requested that 2 crew members, first I requested to have their hats with like the radio on the headset there, and then I requested having 2 backpacks, because one of them is a transmitter and one is the receiver, I believe. So usually you would have 2 people, like you get 2 people in this car, and they would actually have like a cable that's attached between the 2 of them, and they would run around together. I think they always look very funny, and there's photos of that when they run like together and they're sort of like attached to each other. I think that always looks very funny, but that's why it was a bit essential to have like 2 radios. And we tried to do like 2 radios on here as well, the transmitter and the receiver. I think it works like on each side. I think that's what we ended up doing. It's, I just requested it, and just like in very short time they were able to make something up, and I thought it looks great.
Yeah, it definitely takes those minifigs to kind of another level. Though I think another thing that's really nice about this too is obviously, we talked a little bit before we started recording about how, its size and the fact that it includes minifigs makes it a popular kit, but also the price point is super approachable. I think the other cool thing is that there's no stickers on this model. This is a totally printed model, right from those little headlight slits to the radio details. So let's show some of those off a little bit and go through them.
Yeah, definitely. Like the headlight pieces, we could obviously just have used some trans clear tiles. That would have worked fine. But I always think just like it's the small details that really changes it. And the vehicle plate in the back, and then obviously the radio that I just think looks great. And this one, I've heard a lot of people say like this is their favorite part. It's probably my favorite part too.
Yeah.
And just I think it's just like a DAC logo or icon. And the reason I wanted to have it in there is because we also had it in the in the
I love
brief.
that.
So that was like we need to have this included, because I think what's the most fun about Brickmania kits to me is just having all these things that go so well together.
Right.
Like if you have this and you have like a Panzer 3 and you have the Tiger 131 and probably have like a BF 109 also, then you have like a whole army, and they look great together. And also, of course, the minifig of the month. They are just like, they just work so perfectly with the other figures. They look so nice together. They are designed in like the same period, so they match just perfectly. I think it's so much fun just having
when you're
this
able to get those
together.
perfect caliber brick arms too to go with them, you really kind of kick up your detail levels. Like you said, it's the small things, and sometimes just that wood grain texture over just kind of a hunk of plastic will definitely change the look of everything. Especially if you like to animate or take photos of your work.
Yeah. I don't have the Rommel car that John did, but that also works. I've seen people post pictures that they have them side by side, and they just look fantastic together, I think. Just that's what I like most about Brickmania, is just having everything go together and building up like a nice army. Because although all these kits are designed by different people, they all work together perfectly.
So you must have been a big fan of the monthly themes returning then, so that you can get everything that you want, for the months you're interested in, kind of in one fell swoop.
Yeah, before I even knew about the monthly themes that were going to be this year, I said to Dan, we have to do like a North Africa theme, because that's one of my favorites, and it fits well with 1941. Yeah, I just, as you probably can assume, I just love everything that is tan. My kids so far have all been tan, so just, yeah.
Yeah, well, and we're definitely excited to see what's coming in the future. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think they look great together, and also like the honey tank that Mary did, and the plane that was done by Justa. I think they all look great together.
Yeah, that Fulgore was something else. That's one that we're going to have a designer's desk on here, hopefully the same week as you, actually. So it'll be fun to be able to talk a little bit more about the North Africa stuff. But yeah, that green, that dark green and tan, whoo, when that's mixed together, that is a sharp-looking aircraft.
Yeah, for sure.
So is there anything else?
This guy talking to the plane.
Absolutely. Like you said, communication is key. Is there anything else you want to go over on this model before we bring Landon in here to chat a little bit more about the minifigs?
Well, no, I think that's it. I think the kit turned out great. I'm super happy with it. It's just a nice and simple car that works great for any theme you have.
Awesome. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about those minifigs now. Turn things over to Landon and chat about some minifigs of the month.
Hey, what's up, Andreas? I'm here to show off some figures. I guess, Well, first of all, what are your thoughts? How do you think they turned out? I want to hear what you say.
I'm super happy with how the figures turn out. I think that's like the biggest part to buying this kit is the figures. The 3D printing and UV printing and everything, it all came out perfectly, I think. And they just work so nicely with all other figures from the same themes that we've done.
Yeah, right on.
Just like
Thank
the
you.
Rama car
That's
and yeah.
yeah. That's cool to hear, man. I appreciate that because it's obviously. I mean, I think it's a really awesome kit. So I think it all works together really well. Yeah. Anything that stood out to you in particular? Anything?
Well, I think especially like the color shifting on these guys. This guy has like an olive jacket that I think just it looks so cool. It just really very much like a Raiders of the Lost Ark type guys. I think, yeah, they look great, and the headsets, of course, and everything.
Yeah, that color shifting has been fun to play around with. I guess they get their uniforms issued at different times, or maybe they get different batches, or they've been out in the sun for longer. That was kind of my thought behind the different color shifting. I think initially they start out like a lot more green. I think I'm not 100. Like, yeah, they start out more green. Obviously, the examples that we have today are very old, but from what we can tell, that they're considerably more green than what you could sort of expect to see in the desert. But then they quickly would fade, is what that seemed to be. So, yeah, that was what I was going for.
Yeah,
What
and
else?
I also I requested that they look a bit more dirty and just like sweaty and like they've been in the field for a while. That's personally that's just what I really like with the figures when they don't have just like the fresh uniform. They have like dirt spots and they have sweat in their face and everything. I just think that looks great.
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty big challenge to try to get that kind of dirt. Like looking at 1/35th scale, it's you take a picture of like a dirty uniform, and if you were to just try to scale that down, it would look kind of muddled, and you wouldn't necessarily know what it is. So that's a constant. I'm still working at it, but I like this where we're at right now. So that was a good recommendation on your end. Same thing with the backpacks. That was the what is it? Torn Fu D2 radio, yeah, backpack, and so those turned out just unreal. I'm loving those things. I don't know if the camera's focusing on that, but whatever. Yeah, those turned out just unreal. So I was pumped by that, and that was a good suggestion on your part. So yeah, I like
Thank
that.
you. Well, I think they attach well also the way they are designed to fit on the figure. I think that was very clever. But I really like the with also the headset. I think they just it looks instantly recognizable. You just know what this is when you look at him.
Yeah, for sure.
The only thing that would have been fun, but it's very hard to do, is that usually these backpacks are connected with like a string, so that they would just like running side to side.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
think
not in the right
that would have been
spot,
fun,
but like they do have. I mean, maybe you could attach something on the back stud there. They had that Lego
perhaps, yeah.
like rope with the studs on the end of it. I don't know. That might work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. Totally. Yeah, I have. So I also brought. Yeah, so I brought the minifigures of the month that came out at the same time. Hold on. And it's just kind of, I'm just showing this for here, color comparison's sake. 1 second. I'm trying to hold them all at the same time. I don't have like a table in front of me. So, is it focusing? Yeah, so it's you can see all this color shifting going on. And, the thought is like, let's see if we can get them all to kind of look a little bit different, but yet go together. So yeah, again, like you were saying before, it goes well with that German staff car, goes well with the standalone figures. Yeah, all that stuff. So
But I thought it was a great inclusion also having sunglasses on.
Yeah.
Like,
there was an actual photo where I found where he's wearing very similar sunglasses to that. So there's just so much character, I thought, in that picture. I was like, I gotta go for it.
yeah, that's an incredible photo actually. Just, you wouldn't expect to see these types of glasses
No.
like in that era. I think you have a photo of it on your Instagram.
Yeah, I'll see if I can.
think,
I'll see if
so-
I can dig that up and we'll get that posted up. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
there's whenever you're digging into like research material, there's always pictures that just kind of surprise you when you find them. So that was cool to see that there.
All right, Brickmaniacs, this has been another Mobile Designer Studio episode. This is Andreas Eggen joining me, chatting a little bit more about the Afrikakorps radio truck. Andreas, thank you so much for joining me. We're looking forward to seeing what you got coming up next. And to you guys, thanks for watching.